Gentlemen, I just got back from the range and I was testing chronographs, specifically the Velociradar from Caldwell and the Magnetospeed. I fired them simultaneously just to see how things lined up in terms of their accuracy and repeatability. But I had a lot of technical difficulties. I'll go over those very shortly. But first, let's go into some details. First, the Shaw was a 20-inch stainless steel barrel with a muzzle brake, and the Bear Creek Arsenal did not have a muzzle brake, but it is a chromed line bore. More on that later. So let us refocus in on my technical difficulties. For starters, here, you'll see I have some missing data. And this one right here that I have a star next to, the Velociradar did not capture the ballistic coefficient very well at all. So I don't have to edit in a picture of that so you can see what I'm talking about more specifically. But either way, that misalignment was caused by the muzzle brake. You basically have to place the chronograph slightly in front of the barrel, off to the side obviously. That helps mitigate the problem, but does not take care of the problem. That might depend on the muzzle brake though. I'm probably going to have to do some testing, but we're getting too distracted. Long story short, I'm basically missing 3 shots here, we could say. This I included here so you guys could see, but when we look at the graphs over here, I think you'll see that some things are still amiss. That said, because that's slightly nitpicking the Velociradar, look over here at the 16-inch barrel. Legitimately, it picked up a reading. This is not a legitimate speed, but this is a legitimate error. This is an issue I have sometimes with the Magnetospeed, where it reads something really high. Sometimes it's only 600 feet per second, quote unquote, only 600 feet per second. Sometimes it is outrageously high. And I'll include a clip of the video so you can see it like firsthand. And that's shot number 14. 15 came out normal. Shot 14. 5,339. Over a mile a second. But either way, and then over here, well, that's why I have that highlighted there. But here, you can see that although the Velociradar did very well at capturing, I still have one missing. That is actually because another person was out at the range, had set up and started firing. So they fired a shot. The Velociradar actually picked up their shot, but not mine. So if you're going to be going to a crowded range, and you're going to be using the sound activated option, there is a recoil based option, but I was not using that. That can be a downfall. So that needed to be noted. That's why that data is missing. But yeah, we had issues on both sides of the fence. That said, let's take a look at some of our numbers. Let's worry about the graphs later. So first off, with the Shaw, this one was the most consistent, and these are actually really close. Look at this. Standard deviation, 22.9 versus 23. Extreme sped, 87 versus 89. And average speed of 3140 versus 3144. And then, let's see here. Ballistic coefficient, wow, 0.24 for both of them, which is good. And that's appropriate. That's a G1 ballistic coefficient, by the way. Otherwise, here are the numbers. And when we look at the graph, we can see that the Velociradar generally goes a little bit below, with the exception of, you can see here, around shot 10. This is where we have the first time that it goes above the Magnetospeed. And then shot 11 was when it could not read the ballistic coefficient. And then 12 and 13 are missing. So I think 10 was even affected by that misalignment from the muzzle brake. That's definitely unfortunate. But otherwise, you can see here, things line up fairly well. Now let's take a look at the Bear Creek Arsenal 16-inch chrome-lined barrel. I redid the graphs here, but let's take a look at the raw data first, because I feel like this will help us comprehend what's going on the best, maybe. First thing I notice is that despite the fact this is the same type of ammo from the same lot number, we see a lot bigger differences here, and not just simply in terms of the speed averages. Look at this. Extreme spread, 177 versus 119. Standard deviation, 34.3 versus 46. That's yikes. That's worrying. And then when we look over at the graph, we can see that the difference between the numbers is definitely greater as well. Also, what do we note? There are some times where we have some crossover, because generally, opposite of what we had up here with the Shaw 20-inch barrel, the Velociradar is reading higher than the Magnetospeed, and there's a couple times where they cross over, or in other words, one is reading slower or faster than the other, when generally the trend is otherwise. Up here, we had this mulligan, we had this fluke, where we knew from the muzzle brake things were misaligned. So we can explain why that happened. I can't explain why this happened here. And I can't really explain why there's a difference in numbers here either. Maybe, I don't know. I just don't know. But the thing to take away is, when you look at both of them, both sets of these data, I don't see that one chronograph is necessarily more accurate than the other in terms of measuring speed. Like this one over here, this is high as well, this dips down as well. These pretty much account for the maximum and the minimum speeds that you see on the chronograph, and it's really close. Similarly, down here, maximum, minimum, and it's also over here. Yes, there's differences, but it's in the same ballpark, and the ballpark seems to be within 5% of one another, give or take. Now, the Velociradar does have the benefit of developing its own dope table, and I'll have to include a clip of that, because this ammo, I think, well, I'll just have to, and you'll have to see the screenshot. The dope table that the Velociradar generated is different from what's on the box. That's important to know. Now, to be fair to the ammo manufacturer, that might be because I'm firing my firearms in a different area, in a different time of day, with different environmental factors, at a different height above sea level. I'm about 600 feet above sea level. And one last thing to note, this chrome-lined barrel is pretty rough. The G1 ballistic coefficient also registered as slightly lower than the stainless steel barrel. Take that number with a slight grain of salt, though. So in conclusion, I'm pretty happy with this Velociradar. It's a little bit frustrating that it has some issues with muzzle brakes, and we saw the issue here. Truth be told, though, with my Magnetospeed, some muzzle brakes don't cooperate with that very well. For example, the Ultradyne Apollo Max. Ultimately, though, I'm probably going to go with the Velociradar, if only because while I'm doing load development, I don't have to worry about the shift and point to impact. That has been the bane of my existence for the Magnetospeed, more times than what I care to count. I've always mitigated that problem by having fouling shots. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to doing more testing with the Velociradar in the future.